The talk is how user acquisition is evolving in 2025. So this is a 40-minute panel. So if all of our panelists want to make their way up, this chat will be moderated by Richard.
So today's panel is going to be about UA in 2025. We have an expert panel. We missed one person. Maybe she will come in. I don't know. Let me first introduce myself and then this amazing panel. My name is Richard. I've been doing UA for the past 10 years or so. I started at Chartboost and then moved to gaming companies, doing user acquisition, mainly in the role of head of UA. Worked at companies like Azerion, Playtika, Huge Games, and recently started my own UA agency. So basically helping gaming companies with their user acquisition. So I will also be wearing the hat of a UA manager, asking tricky questions to you guys. Maybe, Faheem, you can start with an introduction about yourself and the company that you work for.
Sure thing, All right, hey everyone, this is Faheem, part of AppSamurai. We are an ad tech platform for user acquisition and monetization. Been in this space for over 7 years now, and we offer gaming clients, of course, mid-core, hyper-casual, hybrid casual games with rewarded user acquisition services. So we are one of the niche providers in the Playtime SDK. Playtime is basically a new format of rewarded gaming that is where you are able to reward the user for their playtime and the purchase cashbacks as well. So we've been doing that for the past 5 years, and that is why we are quite excited to be on this panel and share some insights.
Thomas, yeah, please continue.
Yes, hello also from my side. My name is Thomas Kriebernegg. I've been working in the field of digital marketing now for nearly 20 years, around about 13 years in mobile, on the app side, but also on the mobile gaming side. I founded the company of AppRadar, which was specialized or is specialized in the area of app store optimization and got acquired last year by SplitMetrics. And at SplitMetrics, I'm now overseeing the agency business, where we're helping our clients with everything that has to do with UA. Happy to be here in this panel.
Awesome having you. Joseph?
Hey guys, I'm Joseph from Personally. We're a DSP based in Israel, also in the rewarded business recently as well, which is a trend that we'll be talking about. I'm the product lead for everything related to machine learning in the company, and I'm here to talk about that. I've been in AdTech for since I had hair, so it's been a while. It's been 13 plus years. Too long, but you know, we're all with the punches. Thanks.
Awesome.
Hi, hello everyone. Federica from Almedia. We are a rewarded user acquisition platform. Probably you've seen us also here. I've been in the industry for about 10 years. Before I was at Remerge, so app retargeting. And now I'm looking after gaming partnerships at Almedia. Yeah, so very happy to be here and join such an amazing panel.
Sarah?
I'm Sarah from AppLovin. We do UA, monetization, and mediation for our partners in gaming and non-gaming. I've been at AppLovin for almost 6 years now, and AppLovin was actually my first job in this industry.
Amazing. Cool. So we have a bit of rewarded UA. We have agency working with advertisers, right, and AppLovin. I'm quite an optimist. I'm pretty optimistic about our industry, even though we had some difficult years. I saw a statement from, I think it was Sensor Tower, that they say the advertising budgets will grow in 2025, which is good. But that also comes with some new challenges on how to diversify your advertising budgets. It will basically force you to look into new channels, rewarded UA being one of them. I just want to hear, in a broad way, what are your thoughts on diversifying your channels in 2025?
Yes, so as capabilities of DSPs and like everything in the programmatic buying advanced, and they're able to figure out intent both for installations and for purchases, prices in the market increased. This created this vacuum for rewarded to come back again in a format that works better for both the players and the acquisition side. So we've been seeing everyone much more heavily invested in that type of user acquisition. It's much more safe, it's much more comfortable for advertisers to dip their toe in. So you'll see a lot of them investing massive budgets there, splitting it in a way where they're not relying on one instead of the other. Which would also eventually lead to consolidation in that field because you can't have too many that you're working with. So UA managers have to adapt to the new pricing realities that constantly change. They need to find different ways to buy different types of users in different platforms, and we're seeing them doing this naturally and orbiting towards what's easier to manage, which is rewarded. Yeah. Which is why, again, we're back into it and we're trying to also do things in that area. Yeah.
So when you talk about consolidations, can you make a prediction for 2025 already? Is there anything that...
So when it comes to rewarded, it's evolving very quickly because, again, there's so much excitement around it and so many budgets going into it. And the only ones that are going to make it are the ones that are going to solve the long-term retention issue. Like as soon as you stop giving the user rewards, they basically disappear. You need to find a way to actually match the users to the content that they like at some point, regardless of rewards, to some extent. Or you need to strike some balance where you can keep rewarding them in a way where it's still profitable for both sides. We use machine learning to do that, to recommend to users things they would actually like, to adjust the rewards accordingly. But I think the channels that are not really data-oriented and then looking at it completely as like an ad arbitrage thing, like hyper-casual before it and other messes before that, they're probably not going to be able to compete.
Yeah. So machine learning is always quite of a buzzword to me as a UA manager. I also hear there is a lot of AI involved now in the personalization for rewarded UA. What are your companies doing using AI in 2025?
Yeah, maybe to quickly jump in also here from our side, sharing also a little bit insights from the agency perspective. I mean, generally the statement, maybe picking this up again, that we will see UA budgets rising in this year. I think, to be honest, this will also be kind of connected also with the amount of new games, for example, that will be also be published to the market, because I think the costs to create new games are, decreasing heavily, which means that, more noise, and to kind of conquer the more noise, you need to be, more active, you need to gain visibility. So therefore, I think, that means running ads on different channels, wherever it makes sense to figure it out. I think there's not the one solution, but, you really need to figure out where are your best players and how you can reach them. And obviously AI is also a very big supporting tool at the moment. At the moment I would still say supporting tool, if we have this panel in 1 year, maybe the AI will do it without us, and it's not only supporting, it's leading the way, could also be. But it starts really from creation of ads, for example, coming up with different ad sets, sheer amounts that can be produced easily at low cost compared to what we had previously. So therefore I think a lot of different variants of ads trying to reach mass customization and personalization at the same time is what we will be seeing a lot in this year.
Yeah. I do miss that, for as far as I know, that flexibility of testing with rewarded UA, for example. Faheem, is that something that you guys are focusing on?
Yes, so one thing you did mention before to answer that part of it as well, right? So in terms of the flexibility that the user acquisition that my panelist also mentioned, is the way the rewarding structure was being offered to the user has evolved over time as well. So back in the world where we had classic offer walls that were giving out event-based rewards, now they have evolved to playtime, where the user can also be rewarded for session times. A simple example of play this game for 20 minutes each day and get a reward. What this does is, for a gaming advertiser, it increases your day-to retention rate, for example. Every time a user commits to a purchase, rewarded platforms are able to give back a cashback. Hence, day 7, day 14 ROAS is something that helps uplift in these kind of scenarios as well. In terms of what you did ask earlier as well, Richard, in terms of what is the next innovation acquisition here. So I think we have seen a lot of new things come into play, especially, for example, ChatGPT has committed to almost $500 million of recurring revenue with its ads division for this year. So that's a massive commitment, right? So for advertisers to, while they would still bet big on the AppLovins and the Googles as their core channels for main, I think the diversification that you mentioned enters here. Shopify ads, for example, right? There's seamless experience where the ad is presented to the user right before the checkout. So that is a very high intent ad. So that is another platform that will over time kind of, starting from e-commerce, eventually kind of, moving into game mechanics, be a unique platform. And same thing, for example, Meta's Threads. Now Threads is owned by Meta. So Meta in a way is diversifying its portfolio by positioning Threads as a new platform. So while Threads is still backed by Meta's data, years of reporting and analytics, something that ChatGPT ads might be missing because they don't have the backing of Google or let's say, Meta in this case. So that's why Threads would be an outlier in terms of a new channel, especially because you would still be testing that as a new format in a way of using Meta's placement outside of Meta, hence not saturating that ecosystem, right? So these kind of new things will eventually make sure that the advertiser budget doesn't get split, because these are not competing with the budgets of Rewarded or the walled gardens, etc. I think they are complementing on top of that. So they're not substituting the budget. It's a new way, because they still have a long way to go with ChatGPT being evolved with data, etc. So I think for the advertisers, it gives a new way to test a new portfolio while they can still place the big bets on the traditional platforms that would basically be relevant for the rewarded platforms like us or any DSP or any other traditional walled garden as well.
Yeah. But do you think then that search behavior for people is also changing, where they used to use Google, for example, and now start using ChatGPT?
Oh, definitely. Especially you did see that TikTok was one of the biggest search platforms that even kind of left Google behind. Now with the policy changes, that could evolve, but ChatGPT is also betting on that it would have its own search engine component, right? Because the moment that search engine component comes into play, for brands it creates a new opportunity, and for vendors like ourselves it creates a new monetization space as well, because they would eventually want to start monetizing that piece. Again, now the moment you start monetizing a GPT, you are trying to manipulate it to show ads. Now that is the notion that it goes against, because GPT is supposed to give you the results that are best suited for your needs as well. So the user behavior is still not as much into search for games as it would have to be for e-commerce, for example. Like you could go to TikTok and type best makeup for 2024 and you get a big list, but the same thing doesn't apply for gaming. But ChatGPT, as you mentioned, it does kind of visualize a world where the search engine would be the leading search engine, hence kind of populated by all the ads that you mentioned.
Yeah. Thomas, with your background with SplitMetrics, do you think it will affect search ads as well?
Good question. Yeah, I think like when we talk about search overall, I think it's kind of important to classify a little bit when we search for something. Yeah, I think the main use case is still for gathering information. So this is maybe also a little bit a question in the round. Yeah, because like 5 years ago, I think everybody was using Google to gather information. But nowadays, if you are looking for information, who is using ChatGPT instead of Google? Yeah, I think this is kind of a trend. Yeah, interested to see, next year how many hands will go up. Because for me personally, it completely changed. Yeah, so when I'm searching for information, it's 100% ChatGPT nowadays, and so therefore I think that search as such, depending on what you're looking for, will be changing. Yeah, I think still within the app stores, what we're seeing also, like when you're looking at the keyword level, you are at very high intent keywords. For example, like I want to play a multiplayer game, I want to play a casual game, I want to play, I don't know, a game with knights or something like that. So you're, very much already at the final action, so to speak. So I think that will be still the same, but once again, where you gather information, I think that will drastically change.
Yeah, makes sense. So on one hand, we can diversify our channels. On the other, we can also within the channel diversify our approach. I've seen a lot of changes with AppLovin, where it was first on ROAS day 0, now it's day 28. How, based on the UA manager's performance goals, how do they diversify their campaign strategy within AppLovin, for example?
So yeah, actually, when I first started AppLovin almost 6 years ago, we had one campaign type, and that was CPI. You couldn't optimize towards anything. All you could do was get it installed, basically. So that didn't guarantee any later down funnel, how users were going to progress, how they were going to optimize, how they were going to revenue, how much revenue we were going to get, basically. Now we have ROAS campaigns for either ad ROAS or IAP ROAS on day 0, day 7, and day 28. And we also have cost per event and cost per purchaser campaigns. What we do ask is, you were talking about diversifying earlier different channels. We also ask to diversify your campaign approach. And this multi-campaign approach is something that we have really been pushing our advertisers to do that work with us, because in this way they can acquire different users who behave differently, which will overall increase their scale. But they do also need to take into account that a user, for instance, who's acquired to optimize our revenue, hit the ROAS goal by day 0, is going to behave very differently from somebody who you're trying to optimize for on day 28. So they're going to be, you're going to see much better initial ROAS, but obviously, like with the rewarded channels as well, similar thing, the retention maybe won't be there. So you'll need to have different goals for them versus a day 7 user versus a day 28 user who will retain well, but those initial first, maybe even 7 days, won't look as good. So what we've had to work a lot with our advertisers is on realizing, okay, maybe I need not only different KPIs in some cases per channel, but also per campaign type. So you take that into account and you're like, okay, the growth curves will initially align, but we're going to need to know early on that the KPIs need to be slightly different.
Yeah, makes sense. Another trend that I've been noticing is, of course, pretty obvious, but a lot of, so if you look at the top 20 of casino, they now have a web store, right? An alternative web store due to the regulation changes. One thing I've been missing, not necessarily with AppLovin, but also with Reward UA, is that, let's say with Almedia, for example, can you now already reward users that make a purchase in an alternative web store? Is that something that will be on the horizon in 2025?
Yeah, definitely something that can be taken into consideration. I mean, as long as we can get that event, we can reward them, obviously. And in that sense, I mean, it's important exactly for advertisers to understand that with Rewarded, like something that also Sarah mentioned, Rewarded is different from other channels, so they should also look at Rewarded, like they should also define KPIs for Rewarded campaigns differently. And that's a conversation that I always have with my clients, right? Because they have their KPIs on AppLovin, on Meta and Google, and then they expect to have the same on Rewarded. So yeah, that's definitely something to take into consideration. And then Rewarded, yes, in terms of differentiation, of course, it's not, I would say, it doesn't just add scale, it's just not incremental, but it allows you to communicate with the user in a different way, right? That's also something that we should really keep in mind, is the fact that the user are changing, obviously, and they're getting more familiar with this kind of platform. So they know that if they download the game from Free Cash rather than directly from the store, they're gonna get some rewards, right? Yeah. And especially, I mean, there are so many rewarded platforms at the moment, so they're quite popular. Users know about that. Yeah. They're probably even talking about us on some forums. So they're getting smarter, obviously, and that's why I think these platforms are going to grow even more. And speaking of consolidation, you mentioned that before. I don't think it's going to be any consolidation in the next 2-3 years. Okay. I think there's still space for more players, actually. I mean, we see that happening also. Like, we see like new players popping up every month almost. But yeah, at one point, obviously, you know, that has happened before in the market. I've been working in the industry for 10 years. And I was just thinking this morning, I was talking to a colleague, remembering like 10 years ago the events, and then like most of those vendors, they're not here anymore. So it happens in this industry. It's normal, and it's the right thing to do also. So yeah, this is, I would say, probably what we're gonna see in the future.
I'd like to add a little bit about the different messaging to users and the different user types you would see through rewarded channels. So yeah, these users are much savvier than I would initially assume. Seems like they're looking for good deals, This can make the rewarded platform be some sort of extension of your CRM. If you approach it the right way, in the future there can even lead to retargeting and other more complex things. The interesting thing coming from the background of our DSP is that the same users that are valuable for rewarded channels appear to be horrible through the scope of a DSP. Because they have completely different signals, they have generally much more app usage than what would be considered a traditional whale through normal acquisition. So it's really changing the way we're looking at things, and we built it in a way where both systems are very intertwined, so we can learn how to look at users differently. And I think because there are going to be, they're still popping up, as you said, users are going to stick to what they build trust in, what they see added value, and what other features support the whole experience outside of just the game. So I think there's going to be changes. Like you said, most of the names we remember from like 10 years ago aren't here. The same applies for 4 years ago. So this like shrinking, like the explosion of the bubble, the shrinking and everything, it's probably going to repeat the cycle, but we'll see. We can bet on it. I put $20 on consolidation this year.
Let's do that.
Good news for advertisers. If you diversify in channels, if you diversify within the channel with different campaign types, can you then also diversify in more into emerging markets, for example? Is that something that you guys look into as well? You're offering into markets outside of the tier 1 countries?
Yes, so for example, especially the way people have started to define tier 1 is something that has differed. So for example, now Korea is tier 1 as well, right? Because the Korea and Japanese markets have gone quite crazy. A few months ago, we were in Vietnam. So Vietnam is another emerging market. They are more skewed towards hyper and hybrid casual games, not much into mid-core yet. So these economies are rising, and since these economies have massive populations, they scale way quickly, right? The best way to start there is with a certain hyper or hybrid casual schedule. We have not seen a big success with a mid-core or a casual gaming yet, but in the rewarded space, for example, a lot of the publishers are slowly skewing towards the Japanese market, especially. China is the leading market as well. So because tier 1 over time, as all the panelists mentioned, right, it is kind of getting saturated. Tons of rewarded players. There's still a lot of potential. Like all these players, even if they don't consolidate, everybody's still going to earn some bread. Of course, depends how much profit you would earn. But if you have the resources to skew into the new markets, and the uprising markets these days are the Middle East market, starting from Jordan and Dubai. And on the Asian side, you have Vietnam, China, and Korea. These are the leading emerging markets as well. And that's why we are seeing kind of a skew from both the vendors and the advertisers pumping in their user acquisition revenue as well.
And do you see then a big difference in the type of rewards you have to offer users from those countries? Can you give some examples?
Exactly. So one thing, for example, a mid-core game. So let's say, can't name it, but let's say, for a certain day 7 skew, for example, the rewarding structure was roughly around 40% for tier 1 countries. Again, as the panelists mentioned, the users know how it works. The user knows that there are other games that they can keep on playing. So a bit of reward from here, a bit of reward from here. At the end of the month, they have enough in the wallet to cash out from that app. But in the tier 1 country, the countries like Japan and Korea, not many advertisers, or the user doesn't have as many options in terms of playing that game on that rewarded platform. So their source of revenue from per game, the expectation is a bit higher, right? So we have seen them run at lower profits, both for the vendors and the revenue sourcing for the advertisers as well. So that's why kind of, you need to give a bigger end of the carrot, let's say, before they start biting on it.
And in those countries, is it just as competitive in terms of rewarded platforms already, or is there still some room to grow?
There is still room to grow, to be honest. Not the best business idea, but there's still a lot of room to grow. It is not as competitive as other markets because, again, user acquisition is expensive in those markets as well. Convincing publishers to let you scale on the web is more easier, but on the app side, again, localization, your SDK or your reward app need to be in that local language, because although the users speak English, local language localization is something that plays a massive role. So if you enter with limited resources and expecting the user to complement compromise. That's not the case because these users, almost 62% of Japanese audience is a heavy gaming community, right? And they're used to playing some of the best storyline games on console games, right? So when you start moving into the mobile space and you want them to adopt the rewarding apps or could be a rewarded platform as well, the user experience cannot be compromised on, and that is something that starts with localization. So that could be a possible entry barrier to enter with limited resources.
Right. And Sarah, do you see something similar?
So with us, we go for more of an opt-out approach when it comes to geos rather than opt-in. So take all countries and then just have a simple thing of maybe you don't want to advertise, I don't know, in North Korea or something. So the way that our algorithm works, you asked earlier about machine learning, it is based on machine learning, and the more data that you can feed that algorithm, the more accurate it can be when it comes to optimizing towards your goals. So we can share all that learnings among all geos, and there are differences, of course, as you mentioned, with a user, say, in Brazil versus a user in the US, might be slightly different, but if you input your ROAS goal, it's performance marketing, so we're going to optimize towards the goals that you have in place, no matter what the geo is.
That's also for me a little segue to creative production. How do you then, for those worldwide campaigns, do your creative strategy? Because I got a quote here from AppsFlyer that the creative production soared by 40%, 839 variations per month for games that spend more than 100K a month. So there's a huge increase, and there will be a bigger increase probably this year due to generative AI. How do you see for those worldwide campaigns the creative strategy?
So in terms of, we see, well, one thing we see is a much higher volume of creatives being tested, because obviously with AI, you can chug out hundreds of creatives a day if you want. Now, we do have the ability on AppLovin to test as many creatives as you want. Our algorithm automatically promotes the stronger ones and demotes the weaker ones. So there's no manual work when it comes to like, okay, I need to go through every week, pause on my lower performers. All that has been removed in the last year or two since we released this algorithm. But I will still say there is little point in testing 800 variations with slightly different writing. It is, quality should still be the main focus there. And while you can upload as many creatives as you want, you often don't need to, so there's no point in wasting your time. But if you have slightly different variations of a concept, and if it's a big enough of a difference that you think it's going to make a change to a user, then sure, upload it. But if you think you're like changing the writing from black to red, that's probably not going to be a huge difference.
But then, for example, in terms of localization or translations, is that something that you can offer as well for each country, or? So
we have had a lot of different advertisers test a lot of different languages when it comes to creatives and localizations. Generally what we see, English in almost every market still is the main creative that you should be, and language that you should be testing, except in Japan, Korea, and China, realistically, are the three besides English that you really need to have. Sometimes you'll see maybe in Germany or in Brazil, for instance, that those languages do better, but realistically, as long as you have English covered, and then Japanese, Korean, and Chinese, you pretty much got it covered there.
And for you, Joseph, on the DSP side, something similar?
Yeah, so in general, yeah, the technology in order to sample a lot of different creatives quickly is there. The math's been figured out for a while, and implementing it in production became standard for DSPs that are actually savvy and are actually data-driven. So yeah, you can throw everything you want in there. Some advertisers find more success even with these slight variations, because eventually when you're running campaigns for very long, you have high frequency caps, and if users see even slight differences, those can matter. But with generating creatives ourselves, sometimes for our advertisers and also for promoting our rewarded app, we found that generative AI allows us to generate meaningful iterations that are different, to test concepts that are out there quicker, and lets us be more creative at scale, which is great. I hope that advertisers would stick to that rather than just focusing on, okay, I have my 80 variations for this week, all the CTAs are different color. I did a great job. So I think you should try and challenge your status quo all the time with creatives. And
you need to have a proper hypothesis on what you're testing, why you're testing it, and
maybe can I add something regarding creatives? For example, we also use, of course, like AI to optimize and like test creatives for user acquisition, to acquire users for our app. When it comes to when we run user acquisition campaigns for our clients, then creatives, yes, obviously it's important, but it's not the main thing. What it's actually very important is testing the structure, so the way that you reward the user. That's, I would say, probably is like one of the most important things when you run campaigns with rewarded platforms, right? Because we see that, for example, A/B testing the structure really gives you better idea of what kind of events, what kind of rewards, also keeping in mind, for example, the average completion rate that you get from other channels or from organic, and then, according to that, defining the structure and really trying to reward the users for different things. So not only for achieving like a certain level, play for a certain time, but also like giving cashbacks. And plus, also something that we've been doing recently is like offering like some sort of prizes on top of that. So, if the users complete the offer or achieve a certain level, they can then enter the raffle, and then the advertiser can offer like this special rewards, let's say.
And that is something that is done by the advertiser or by you guys to come up with those A/B tests?
It's done by us, obviously, but yeah. So yeah, that's something it's unique, right? It's something that you cannot do with anything else. I mean, obviously, you could do that directly, but if you do it with us or like with any rewarded platform, it's much better, right? Yeah. We handle everything. Yeah. So.
And for you, Thomas, a lot of creative testing as well for the clients that you work with?
Totally, yeah. And maybe also sharing here a really, up-to-date example, I would call. Unfortunately, not yet, I would say, a client of us, but Arch Hero 2 by Hubby. I guess most of you guys know at least Arch Hero 1, but the game, was released exactly 1 week ago, so that was the hard launch, and I checked out the meta ad gallery today in the morning. It was 820 different creatives, so 1 week, once again, yeah. The language of them was only English, so that was also, I think, very interesting, but also, I would really recommend everybody working in UA checking it out, because this is, I think, really the top-notch how you can set up different creatives, different styles, mix between UGC, mix between storyline telling, mix between showing in-game footage of the game. It was very inspiring, I have to say. Yeah. And so therefore, I think there is a lot of testing that needs to be done, as we can see, from leading games, so to speak. And I think also that localization is a topic, yeah. I really think also with the help of AI, it has never been easier, I would say, to localize an ad into, 20, 30, 50 different languages. And being a non-native English speaker, I'm from Austria, so if I see something in German, that obviously triggers me more than if I read something in English. And I guess that's with everybody who is not speaking English as their main language, yeah. So I think that is a big topic for sure, yeah.
And if they, the clients that you work with, if they have a significant creative production, do they struggle then also to measure the effectiveness of all the creatives, what the outcomes are? Or?
I mean, it depends always on the approach. At the end of the day, you need to have a good approach that helps you finding out, what is working, also how you are evaluating your creatives, what are you testing exactly, and then figure out is, for example, red versus green, yeah, what is better on the button, yeah. I mean, those are the smart tests, but I'm more thinking really on a high level, is it a UGC ad with a creator that is screaming versus a UGC ad with a creator that is having a lot of fun, yeah, something like this, and then figuring out what is driving more at the end of the day, yeah. But it comes down to tracking, analysis, and making good decisions at the end of the day, yeah.
That's where AI can actually help. Like one place where AI can't help yet in creative production, is video, because it's still not figured out physics, and things look very weird, and fingers pop out of nowhere, and foes pop up of nowhere, and people get scared. So I would avoid that for the upcoming half year at least. Things are moving at exponential rate, so maybe they'll solve it by then.
Having physics in AI, generative AI, is a game changer.
That's gonna change all productions, I think. They're gonna start there most likely. I don't know, it really depends on what you're doing. I mean, on the other hand, you have companies like Papaya that produce amazing live productions that win awards for ads. and those work out for them in terms of performance as well. So it's always going to be a balance. It's going to be about your size as a company, but it's going to make things easier to churn out in a good way, yeah. But
the balance between quality and quantity.
Yeah, but what I wanted to say is AI is useful for tagging your data, the creatives, with informative things. So if you have positive or negative messaging, you don't want AI to interpret it, you want to label it yourself and then determine its impact down the line. And there's still this like endless debate when we talk with advertisers about should you optimize the ads towards post-install performance or just getting the user to install. I'm on the camp of the value proposition comes inside the app. You shouldn't try to get the user to pay just by seeing your ad. So, but I could argue with people from Playtica or like other big ones that would say the complete opposite, and for them it's like God's words. It's that way.
But
so
that's also the balance between volume and quality, right?
Yeah.
And just to add to that, right, one thing that is very, very common is I think from when you look at the pros of AI, of course, all the colleagues mentioned that, but the cons of it are kind of, one of them being the physics part. But I think DALL-E's new release does fix physics in some sorts, but the oversaturation of creative literature that you mentioned, I think AppsFlare's statement was also relating to that in a manner that I think as a user, things start to look the same. If you kind of, senselessly start producing creatives, as Sarah mentioned, like, 800 variations of the creative as well. So as an end user, you initially start scrolling and you're like, okay, now this feels saturated, right? So I think AI is, as Joel mentioned, right, it's a good place to get started, but without that human touch to guide it, or it could be to optimize the creative, to optimize the data, or to guide it on kind of how to still stand out. Let's say the physics of DALL-E has kind of been sorted out, but still brands still need kind of the creative team to still add in that input to still stand out, because AI can only take you so far, at least in the initial few months, as all the colleagues mentioned. So that is something that we are kind of talking to clients on this as well. So creative production is something that is kind of favorable, but provided you have the right human resource to take advantage of it, because again, the AI is only as good as the human using it. It's one of those things as well, right? Because you can only take it so far without having to personalize or customize it.
But if we then look at the marketing teams that you guys are working with in the upcoming year, if they become more productive, there's more output, do you think there will also be a change in team sizes, that there might be redundancies? Or I want to stay positive. I started off positive. I want to stay positive. But any thoughts on that?
I mean, we already see this happen, unfortunately, in a lot of startups, of course, because one thing, if you're from a startup world, is all the investors running behind efficiency, right? So you have certain capital, you are growing, that's good, but how efficient are you at? And of course, for investors, of course, you speak to a lot of VCs as well. The biggest way to make yourself efficient is, along with your tech cost, you drop down the human resource cost to it as well. So we will see that. We are already seeing that as well, but is it, again, it depends on which side of the game you play at, as they mentioned, right? In the rewarded space, for example, creatives matter only so much, because for the user, it's all about how you guide them to get the best offer from this. So in the rewarded space, creative production is not much of a handicap as much as it could be for a programmatic channel, for example. So again, depends on how diversified the channel a certain game is using. These days, we see quite a healthy split, as Joe mentioned as well, that compared to 5 years ago, the rewarded budgets have increased significantly. So they have not taken a share from the typical budgets, rather they have taken an incremental budget. So as long as those channels are quite well maintained, I think the team size looking after rewarded will still be able to function without much creative into world, hence not kind of relying a lot into manual human input as well.
I think that UA managers and basically anyone working in tech has to be more effective than they were last year with the way things are moving. With UA managers, it's even a bit more extreme, because really like the paradigms change frequently. So the only thing that we do see changing in teams like broadly is really on the production side. You have less people working on that side. The good ones there either become team leaders or they shift towards other things and they find their places. But yeah, it's about being able to be savvy enough to work with the new tools, be more productive, measure things in a different way. So we're seeing UA managers evolve rapidly in the past few years.
Yeah, and I also think that what we're actually seeing already is that there will be more specialization, in the sense that Before they were like UA managers, they were like managing DSPs or Google Meta and rewarded. And now, for example, since sometimes there is someone that is only managing rewarded.
Yeah.
So, and we've seen that happening already. Like as I said, like before I was in the retargeting space, and it was the same. When we started, he was UA manager, also running managing app retargeting campaigns, and then at one point it was the retargeting specialist. I think that's very important, for example, because that changes completely the approach that you have to those channels.
Yeah, makes sense.
Maybe to quickly add, also from the agency side, since we're working together with some of the biggest games and apps on this planet, I would say our limiting factor in the past was always how many people do we have in the team, because that is kind of also dedicating with how many companies can we work together. But I think, to be honest, now looking into the future, or we are also at right seeing it, we're scaling, but without adding new people. We're just like improving our tech stack that we're using within the agency. And so right at the moment, I would say we are in the beginning, I would call it, of this hybrid workforce between AI agents and our human people, managers in the background that are using this technology. But I mean, today, once again, 1 year, 2 years, I don't know, in 2 years maybe only me and 1,000 agents, or maybe not even me anymore, It's hard to say.
Yeah. I see we have 2 more minutes, though. I actually want to wrap up before we go to the questions. What excites you most about 2025? Who would like to start with that one?
I can.
Of course.
So I think, kind of touching back on what we were talking about, partially machine learning, partially just being able to diversify not only the channels and how you look at them, but also the multi-campaign approach, multi-channel approach, and just being able to look at your KPIs and have them, properly set per channel, per campaign type, just to make sure that you can get the best scale and users that you can possibly can.
Cool.
One thing that is something that is more like a prediction is, so of course, in the current scenario of world, doing a soft launch has its own specific channels, but I believe very soon rewarded channels, as Sarah mentioned as well, right, with their own set of KPIs will also be an an increasing usage of platform for soft launches, because you know that you are going to invest in this channel for a certain point of time. So you want to know that a soft launch can get you a certain ROAS on your AppLovin and all the good stuff, but with the rewarded side of things, since you know there's a massive user base there, you want to know what kind of KPIs to expect before the hard launch, right? So one of the things that excites me is being able to partner with these new upcoming studios to be a part of their soft launch as a rewarded partner, something that could be quite interesting to see as well.
In that scenario, would it then also be possible to start using custom store listings, where you say, okay, this is the reward, and we direct them to different custom store listings to start testing that as well?
Exactly. So the rewarding structure, especially in our SDK, depends on what the user picks it up as well. The user could pick it up to cash it out on Amazon, could be a PayPal transfer, could be a bank transfer, could be a crypto wallet transfer. So again, as technology partners, it's our responsibility to make sure that the users find the means, if they are willing to invest their time in your channel to help you create a channel, you need to make sure that when it comes to cashing out or making their user experience better, you need to offer them more alternatives, as you did mention. Could be the NFT space, could be the crypto space, or in today's world, Amazon gift cards leads the space, to be honest.
Awesome, thank you.
I think for me the most interesting topic is around localization, and the enablement of localization, once again with the help of AI, obviously. I just yesterday had a very interesting conversation with a guy from TikTok who was, and I asked him the question, are you guys responding to the reviews that you're getting on the App Store? Because they're getting hundreds of thousands of reviews, and the answer was also, well, in the past, having people in 180 different countries speaking all the local languages, that's even for TikTok it was not the thing, but nowadays with the help of AI, it's one person maybe, and who can do the job, and I think that is, I think, really what fascinates me the most about this upcoming year.
Cool.
For me, it's a lot of the stuff we've been working on the machine learning side on the back end. So it's also evolved with the way everything is evolving with LLMs. We're taking a lot of influence from the way they treat context and understand the way, eventually it knows how to respond to you in even specific tones and specific structures. So building and adjusting a recommendation system to understand that level of nuance is amazing to see, because eventually you can see it matching things in a way where the same way I'm very satisfied with the Spotify discovery feature. I'm like, how the hell do you know this like weird supergroup from Seattle that I never heard about and I love it now after listening for 2 songs. So we're seeing that happening more and more. Connecting that to the rewarded side is also exciting. So
more precise targeting and more personalization.
Yeah, while still having privacy in mind and still making that.
Of course, yeah. A topic that we're not going to talk about to annoy the legal teams.
Yes. Yeah, and for me, it will be how rewarded platforms are going to tackle some of the challenges that we're all facing, I guess. One being ROAS progression. It's a good one. Also, how segmentation is going to evolve. That's also another very important point for rewarded platforms. And yeah, in general, basically like these 2 main things. I mean, it will be very interesting to see how we're going to do it. And also like the fact that we have access to a lot of data, first-party data, like we know a lot about our users, where they're coming from, what they prefer, and so on. So how are we going to use that? That's another thing.
No follow-up questions on the legal part or data part. Questions from the audience? Yeah? There's a microphone coming, I think.
Thank you guys for sharing your knowledge here today. So I have a sort of a challenge myself. I work on a hyper-casual company. So that means that we are heavily based on ad revenue, 90% of it comes from it. So that means that the lifetime value of the users is quite low. So I'm reaching sort of a cap in scaling. So basically I'm ROI based, so I cannot bid higher than what I'm actually assuming I'm gonna get from the users. So is there any tips on how to tackle this and keep growing, aside from the obvious, try to increase your lifetime value so you can bid higher? Thank you.
Not much. That's being like brutally honest. Like so hyper casual was like before the rewarded space was created, that was like the solution to do ad arbitrage. The only things that are surviving in that field now are the few exceptional titles that basically everyone installs, and that somehow can still strike a balance without having the user really hate them for the amount of ads, right? So yeah, it's going to be tough, because the same way we mentioned users becoming savvier, you can see them become more brutal in the comments and less more aware of like the ad quantities and like what they're getting in return for their time. So there should be ways to evolve out of it, but yeah, like honestly, like you said, you can't outbid yourself. It's a harsh reality.
Maybe to add, depending if you have multiple titles in the portfolio, or if you have a big website that is getting traffic or something like this, so kind of looking in sources that you own, where you don't have to pay anybody, like for the traffic that you're getting, and trying to transfer it to your new title. That, I guess, is kind of one of the things that could still work, depending obviously on like how big your own inventory is, so to speak. But aside of that, obvious answer, increased LTV.
Thank you, guys.
I think that about wraps as well. So we have a massive round of applause, please, for our panelists. Thank you. So.